Hi there, this is Catherine. Thank you so much for turning in to another episode of the Digital Marketing Victories podcast. Before we get into this month's episode, I just want to share with you the ways that you can support the podcast if you're finding the episodes helpful. You can send me a donation at buymeacoffee.com/DMV podcast. Any and all level of donation would be very much appreciated. Help me offset the cost of producing the podcast. I'd also encourage you to subscribe to our newsletter so that you don't miss a future episode or any other news about the podcast. And to do that, you go to wostrategies.com/newsletter. Okay, on with our episode. Welcome to the Digital Marketing Victories podcast, a monthly show where we celebrate and learn from the changemakers in digital marketing. Great digital marketers understand that people are the most challenging part of doing their jobs. And this show focuses on the people part of digital marketing wins, what tactics or skills the guests use to align people with their marketing strategy. I'm your host, Catherine Watsier-Ong, the owner of WO Strategies, LLC. We focus on increasing organic discovery for our enterprise-sized, science-focused clients. Thank you for joining me. Let's get into it and celebrate our victories. Hi there, this is Catherine. This is just a quick note to let you know that this is going to be the last episode of the season this year. As you possibly can hear, I'm losing my voice for some reason, and we're not quite sure why. So I'm going to sort that out before I spend too much time on the show using it and not being able to have my voice for other things. But I'm looking forward to next year. I've got some great guests lined up, and I hope you have enjoyed this season. Today, we're welcomed by Tazmin Suleman. Tazmin's a coach, corporate trainer, podcaster with over a decade of experience in personal development. She's helped individuals transform their lives both professionally and personally through the power of mindset and self-care. In a world that has normalized stress as an unavailable professional hazard, she believes that well-being is the power that can drive success by building a person's confidence, resilience, and ability to handle any challenge. Through her coaching program, Revitalize, her corporate offerings, and the SEO Mindset podcast, which she co-hosts with Sarah McDonald, Tazmin strives to help others develop their self and life mastery. So this episode is going to be perfect for you if you're curious about how to manage your emotions and whether or not it's a key soft skill that you need to develop, how you can use mindfulness and other techniques to manage your stress, develop patience, keep your cool, handle conflict more effectively. And then we're also going to be talking about how you should think about your career for the long term, visualizing success, setting your own personal development goals, tips for seeking feedback, and rethinking your emotional response to failures. So, Tazmin, welcome to the show.
Well, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
So, I'm sure most people listening know a bit about you because of your mindset podcast, but why don't you give us a little intro about your background and what led you to coaching? Because I know you used to be doing tactical SEO and now you're not. So let everybody know how you got there.
So I sort of fell into IT by accident, and then I stayed in it. Back in the day, it was called IT, now it's called tech. Yeah, and it was a job. I went to work, I did a thing, and I came back, and I didn't really think much more of it than a job. But it was only when I was working as a data analyst, my manager pulled me aside and said, Tazmin, all of the directors have trained to be coaches, and they are looking to get their practice hours. Would you like to nominate yourself? I didn't know anything about coaching at that time. I just had such deep respect for her. I said yes. But I remember going to my first coaching session, telling the coach, don't tell me to be a manager because that's not who I am. And he smiled and said, okay, let's explore. And through that exploration, within 6 weeks, I found I was actually managing the team and enjoying it. And that was my first glimpse at the power of coaching. And that was it. I got the bug then. So around about the same time, my marriage had ended and I had a lot of time, and it was, when the universe gives you things when you need it the most. I was being introduced to the world of personal development through family, through lots of different avenues. And I started taking myself seriously. I started taking ownership and understanding myself more, reflecting more, journaling more, and was drawn to doing personal development things. I remember in the same company saying to the managing director, I'd really like to do a goal setting workshop. And they were up for it, said, fine, go ahead. So coaching and personal development was something I wanted to do. But it wasn't until 10 years later when I was actually working in SEO at Argos, and we'd gone through lockdown, and it's a story in itself because I was on a week off. And at the time they were saying, take time off, and there was nowhere to go, right? Couldn't book a flight, couldn't do anything. I thought to myself, if I could go anywhere, where would I go? Well, I would go to Kerala to a yoga retreat and reflect and meditate. So I created that environment in my home in Milton Keynes. I had a schedule, I had books I was going to read, as walks I was going to go on. And that was on the Monday. On the Wednesday, through a team meeting, which my manager rang me and said, I have to be on that, I found that my role was being made redundant. And I was going to lose my job. And I suppose that first day when I found out, I was in shock and I cried a lot. And then the next day, I thought, you can either carry on crying or you can enjoy the next 2 days of your holiday back at the retreat. And that's when I took the opportunity of actually thinking, is this an opportunity? And took the steps into getting accredited, building a business, launching the podcast, and here I am now. So it was a difficult situation, which I was fortunate enough to be able to turn around.
Yeah, sometimes you need a little nudge to do your own thing, but it works out to be the best thing. Yeah, definitely. So since this entire podcast is about soft skills, as is yours, actually, can you share a story about where focusing on soft skills impacted your career trajectory? I mean, I know you sort of talked about your retreat, but particularly what kind of soft skills did you lean on maybe as you're starting your new business?
So soft skills in my own business, it was a lot like the coaching side of it, a lot of listening. But I think my awareness of the power of soft skills started even before that. So when I was being promoted into that role, I'd never been a manager before. I didn't know what that was. I didn't understand. It was the beginning of my leadership career. But one of the things, and I was lucky that I had some great managers myself, was really understanding the team, taking a step back and using those soft skills to understand them. So I booked one-to-ones with all of them to understand their motivation. And I remember them being very confused at the time because it wasn't something that had ever happened. And then from that, we developed what they wanted to develop in, how they wanted their career to move forward. And where possible, I would then align project work with opportunities for them to develop in that way. And around the same time, we also said, developing yourself in learning new skills is also important. So Friday afternoons was their time to do whatever learning they wanted to do. And despite giving a chunk of the week back to them, we actually improved our productivity by 20%. And that was all through the power of listening, aligning, working on their soft skills, their development. And for me, that was mind-blowing.
And this is an in-house position, right? Where you're managing people? Yeah. I was just wondering because I ran a team, but at an agency, and it's almost impossible to carve out that personal development time. And it's so necessary for our industry, but it was, you got the billability you need to meet every month or every week. So I'm kind of curious whether or not you have an example of where managing your emotions or understanding the emotions really led to a breakthrough. I mean, you talked about aligning people and having productivity because of the professional development time. Was there an example in your life where managing your emotions really helped or where you needed to? Obviously, when you were let go, you can't say things inappropriate at that moment. Ideally, you want to leave with good graces, but is there another example?
I suppose, the redundancy one was one when I had to really manage my emotions and think, okay, what do I want now? Running your own business, you will fail more the times than you succeed. And it is, again, managing those emotions, taking a step back, saying, okay, what happened here? What can I learn from it? Where could I have been better? What am I still doing right that I have to continue doing right? Because when you get frustrated, angry, resentful, all of those negative emotions, they actually drain your energy and you don't need that. And sometimes things aren't going as well as you want them to do, but you have to start every morning with the attitude that today's going to be a good day. So even if you wake up thinking, oh, I didn't get that client, or that's not working out so well, you have to start thinking higher than you feel in order to be able to think positively enough to move on to that next step. And it's a everyday thing, and it is, gratitude helps a lot. People think of gratitude as some woo-woo thing that it's just a nice thing to do. It's actually an essential thing to do if you want to be able to work with longevity in anything, because in order to succeed you have to, because you will have so many failures along the path. It is being able to pick yourself up every single morning and get yourself to that headspace where I am going to be able to figure it out today. I am getting better every day. It is going to be a good day, and just keep going. In a more personal scenario, I remember, again, this was more at the beginning of me learning about me. So at the time, two teenage children, one had gone to university, would come home in the holidays, and he was an adult then, so he didn't need to do things like washing the dishes. And I would come home from work, tired, about to cook a meal, and the kitchen was a state. I'd go upstairs, I'd yell, he'd come down, grumpy, do the dishes, and the result was not a very nice evening at all.
Mm.
So then it was taking a step back and saying, okay, what is the outcome I want here? Is it a clean sink? Is it a nice evening? Or is it actually a good relationship with my son? And if it's the last, which, I mean, it was all three, but predominantly it was a good relationship, then is the way I'm acting going to get me that? No, absolutely it wasn't. So then it was a very intentional shift on my part. I'd come home, we'd still have dishes in sink. And I'd go upstairs, I'd say to him, how are you? How's your day been? He would answer, respond, ask me. And then I'd say something along the lines of, I'm going to go and cook in a little while. Would you go downstairs and tidy up the kitchen? And because the energy was different, he would go down, he'd do the dishes, I'd come down to start cooking. He would then stay, chop veg, chit chat. The result was the dishes got done, the evening was nice, but we were on the path of having a better relationship. So once you can learn that skill to be able to keep your emotions in check, think with your head, think long term, what do I want here? And then adjust your behavior. That then works in your personal life and your professional life, and it can only make both of those better.
It's amazing how having kids gives you so much practice on relationship management and how the energy thing is really big. You never notice that. Like, okay, I sort of noticed that when I had a dog. They always say, like, you have to keep your calm energy, otherwise the dog reacts. But yeah, the kids absorb it too. And then being very clear about how you're interacting. I mean, I have a very smart 10-year-old. So now she's actually, she'll stop me and she's like, Mom, when you say it this way, it does this to me. But if you say it this way, I can handle it better. So she's like coaching me too. It's just fascinating how much practice you get in that relationship. I was also thinking about in relation to managing emotions. I was just on a Women in Tech SEO social chat just this week, and there was somebody else who had been running their business. I'm on year 9. She was in year 5. And we were talking about how you don't realize this when you're going to start your own business, but there's a lot of emotional management that you need to do around slow moments in your business so that you don't flip out about revenue coming in and start spiraling in a negative way. And it's hard. And it took a lot of work over the years for me to not be worried and all those negative emotions. And I have to admit, at year 9, I think I'm good. I'm actually really good. I'm not flipped out. But we were talking about that, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm working on it." It's just something they don't tell you when you start your own business, but it's one of those things you have to. It's the hardest thing, I think, maybe about starting your entire business, is managing that feeling as work ebbs and flows. Instead, I get excited that I get to do professional development when it's a little slow, which is a different way of thinking about it. So do you have any specific tips around how people, pulling this back to the work world, like how they can manage their emotions at work? Any tips or tactics that they could use when things get escalated?
So one thing that I have a very, very deep belief, and it's not like it's a controversial topic, but some people believe it and some people dismiss it. And the belief is that constant stress is absolutely no good for me physically or mentally. Therefore, my job is to remain as calm as possible for me. Not for them, not for you, not for anyone else, for me. So even in my home, I don't want people coming in and bickering. If they've come over for an evening at my house, I don't need any petty arguments. Go off and do that somewhere else, because the energy of my house is really important to me, and my stress is really, or lack of stress is really important. So that's one thing, like my outcome, my desired outcome is that. Then there's an awareness. So Mental Health England have this concept called a stress container. And they're saying in that concept that everyone has got a certain amount of stress that they are able to take. When things are tickety-boo in life, that container is bigger. So the capacity to deal with a lot of stress is more. And when things are a bit more fraught, if there's a relative that's not well, or if you're going through a divorce or house change or whatever, then your capacity is less. So having that awareness that there's only so much I'm going to be able to take is really good. Now, in that container, as the day progresses, you get that stress going into that container, drip, 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 drip. And if it gets too much, it's going to overflow. And that's where you then would probably do something like reach for a cigarette, reach for a drink, shout at somebody, or go into a reclusive mode. Everyone's different, right? But there's also a tap that you can then release that stress by. So by, again, hopefully people use more healthy ways, like meditating, breathing exercises, going for a walk, speaking to a loved one, giving your kids a hug, whatever it is. But there'll be things that make us feel better naturally. Some people then may also resort to having a cigarette. But it's having that concept in your head and then tapping into yourself during the day. How am I feeling? How stressed am I feeling right now? In life in general, what's on my plate? So little things, if I've got a lot on and we've got a big family function, I may then choose to order in or reduce the size of the menu or ask other people for help. And it's being, again, taking the emotion out of it and being really logical and rational about how do I deal with this. So if I'm feeling particularly stressed during the day, I will have on my self-care menu, I encourage everyone to have a self-care menu. Mm-hmm. And some of it are quick bites, your little 5-minute things. And for me, it literally is walking out into my back garden and breathing, because we're fortunate we don't have, you can hear a lot of bird song, you can hear a lot of children playing in the park not far away, and it's nice, and that automatically will reduce my stress. So it's doing things like that. Longer term, meditation has helped me a lot. And meditation to me used to be sitting down, thinking of a lake with no ripples. And if there was a ripple, then I'd failed. I now, for me, and I'm sure for many, it's the practicing the ability of controlling your thinking. And that, again, will help with emotional intelligence, things like pausing. So if something's happening, a bit like the washing up story. What do I want the outcome to be? Because very often we feel like we've got to say yes to something or no to something. Whereas sometimes we don't have to do anything. There's usually a third option. I can say silence here. I can say to the person, I've heard what you've said. I need to think about this. Or you can say, I've heard what you said. I'm just going to take a little bit of a walk. Whatever, you can buy yourself time. It's rare that a question has to be answered immediately. Perspective. So when things are going wrong, asking yourself, what's the worst that can happen? All right, this has happened. By me shouting and screaming, is it going to change? Probably not. So that awareness, that perspective. I think also acceptance that just because somebody else is doing something different to the way I do it doesn't mean it's wrong. People are different. And we tend to think we're always right. And if they're doing it differently, it's wrong.
Do you love podcasts? Have you ever thought about creating your own podcast? What are you waiting for? Get started at podup.com. PodUp is one of the sponsors of this podcast, and they would love to someday sponsor yours. Starting is as easy as creating an account at podup.com today. PodUp has everything you need to run a full professional show with over 35 different tools with AI integration. Get a 7-day free trial with no credit card required and 15% off with the code digitalmarketingvictories15. Don't have time to start a podcast? Check out podallies.com. Get a team of podcast professionals to do all of the website, social media, and editing work for your podcast. Pod Allies is an agency run by the folks who built the PodUp podcasting software. Get started with them at podallies.com. Get 15% off when you sign up for today for either PodUp or Pod Allies with the code digitalmarketingvictories15. PodUp and Pod Allies can't wait to create with you and launch your podcast. Also, they have their own stress bucket. You should be thinking about what's in their stress bucket. And particularly when I was managing a team, it was helpful during the one-on-ones to figure out perhaps what's in their stress bucket, right? So you can adjust your expectations and maybe adjust the work assignments and that kind of thing, depending on what they've got going on outside of work.
And having that time, like you said, on their one-to-ones, and you don't even have to do a lot of talking. You just ask them a question. You can tell from their body language, from their nonverbal communication. And if you know them and they're acting out a character, then give them the benefit of the doubt. Something's probably underneath the bonnet.
Yeah, that's one skill I definitely learned from my husband. He, coming into the relationship with him, he had a lot more, practice, native ability to have empathy about the other person. It was miraculous to see. So I've been leeching that off of him over the last decade, learning from him. But yeah, he's always like, we'd have like a weird reaction in a store and we'd walk away and he's like, it seems like they're having a tough day. It was his native response versus like immediately getting angry and why, they must have something really hard going on. Anyway, it's a really delightful way to think about other people when they have a negative reaction to you, honestly. I also think the list of self-care is not native to everybody. Now, early on, I want to say undergrad, I probably wrote that list. And now I've got it sort of mentally, my self-care checklists, some that take longer, some that are shorter. But I don't think everybody maybe has that list. And if you've never written one down, you should write it down once until you kind of memorize it and have it part of your DNA. Because if life is really tough, it's hard to remember. It's also hard to remember what can I do with the amount of time I have. And so putting that list up on your wall, if you don't already have it in your DNA, I think that's really helpful. You mentioned thinking about the worst things could be. That was something I did early in my career too. That was really helpful. And now I'm okay. But at that moment, I really needed that kind of tip. Like, okay, but spiral this. How bad could it be? And really, like, how could you handle that? Are you still functioning and alive? And do you still have family and friends who love you? Yeah. Especially in the ebb and flow of a marketing career where you get laid off frequently, right? And you jump jobs a lot. So I mean, I think that's what I needed it the most was during those rocky years, like thinking about, okay, but if I lose this job, I'm still probably going to have food, right? My brother's nearby, he can help me out, whatever. You just walk through the scenario and then it helps you de-escalate your emotions around it and handle it better when it actually happens. Not that being laid off is easy. It's really hard, but if you walk through the scenario once in your head, it's more helpful when it happens and then you can handle it better.
And I think also not needing to be liked by everyone. Because sometimes we react emotionally because we think someone's not, doesn't agree with us. Or, it's okay. Not everyone has to like me. And because I know that I don't like everybody. And it's just a character difference. But sometimes that need to be wanted, liked, approved of, that validation can again cause us not to act in the best emotional way.
You're reminding me, I have a book that's on my reading list. Yeah. And it's currently in the house. I haven't picked it up yet to read it, but related. The book's called The Courage to be Disliked: How to Free Yourself, Change Your Life, and Achieve Real Happiness. So it has, 4 stars in Goodreads. I'll give you all an update once I get a chance to finish it. But yes, along the same lines, perhaps it's okay that not everybody likes you. I think it's easier as a woman to live that in your skin once you've gone a little bit beyond the age of 40. I'm just saying. It was really hard for me to embody that in my 20s, but I forget what year it was, but definitively in your 40s, I could really not care about whether people like me or not. The people who appreciate me will like me, right? And then the people who don't, I just move on with my life. It's not worth the energy. Yeah. You're nodding your head like you agree.
Sorry for all of those under 40. But I think there's different facets to it that yes, absolutely age can help you, but also the more you appreciate yourself and are okay with yourself, and even to the point of, oh, I messed up there. It's okay. Next time I will do better, rather than just tearing yourself to shreds. And I think the thing that helps me the most in managing my emotions is reminding myself, who do I want to be? So right now, in this scenario, do I want to be remembered as the angry manager or the manager who didn't have empathy or whatever? No, I don't. I want to be remembered for somebody who lived with humility and dignity and empathy and understanding and grace. And for me, I feel like every goal in my life, the ones that I do personally and the ones that just happen to me, like life happens, right? Everything is chipping away at your character. And at every moment, you have an opportunity to either become closer to the character that you want to be or further away from it. That's your bottom line on goal setting.
I know it's fascinating to think about how your personality is not set. It changes over the years, and that you can proactively and small baby steps move you closer to where you want to be for sure. Hence my journey with soft skills through my entire career, huge focus of mine. So I'm kind of curious, since you have coaching clients, do you have examples of where you've been able to help clients with a mindset shift to become more resilient?
So yeah, lots of them. And that's one of the questions I'll ask them. Who do you want to be? Or which version would you be prouder of? So whether it is being able to set boundaries with your manager. There was one client who had a new manager that had come back from a period of time away and was supercharged and wanted to do this. And this particular client had a certain way of working. And in order to impress was then going to the nth degree of every single piece of work, was then exhausted And then super energized manager came in and wanted, half an hour meeting that ran into 3 hours. And this particular client was then drained. It was okay, let's unpick it. And through unpicking it, they discovered that actually that nth degree of detail was completely unnecessary and was being done in order to overcompensate, sort of a weird sort of people pleasing type of thing. But it came from lack of confidence. And it was understanding, okay, what's required of me here? And asking the question, I've got this piece of work. What is it that you want from it? Do you just want a top level analysis? Do you want me to go deeper? So being able to communicate that and to be able to say, you've put a meeting in at my lunchtime. Unfortunately, could we move that till 1 o'clock? And having the confidence to say those things. And actually, a lot of the issues were in their head, saying, "Oh, they won't like it. This isn't going to be good for my career." And in the end, I remember one of the questions I'll ask is, what was life like before Revitalize and after Revitalize? And they said, before Revitalize, I felt stuck, and now I feel worthy. And for me, that is that core element that you need, that sense of self-worth, because otherwise you'll end up people pleasing or you'll want to be liked. And that then takes you into all sorts of spirals. And what was really heartwarming was after working together, they were offered a mentorship position and then were teaching their mentee similar mindset shifts about understanding that particular person's value. So that mentee had come from abroad, didn't really want to do the Friday night drinks. They had a family of their own. And my client was able to then help them through that.
So how many of your clients come to you with what you would maybe categorize as confidence issues? What is the range of sort of, soft skill issues that you're working on, and what do you see the most?
So broadly, 3 buckets. There are people who are coming for confidence issues. Now, that doesn't mean that they're always at the beginning of their career and taking that first step up. This could, I've had entrepreneurs coming because they then wanted to take their business to the next level. And my coach had this saying that stuck in my head, that at every level, there's a different devil. So you may have it all sorted for that first step in your career or your freelancing journey, and you'll feel like you've got it sorted, but then you go to the next level, and again, all of that hits you again, right? That lack of confidence. Am I doing this right? So that's one broad bucket. Another broad bucket is, I know that this isn't the life I want, but I don't know what I do want, and they're stuck. And it's helping them navigate that journey. And then that sometimes then also then folds into the confidence. Okay, now I know what I want, but I don't have the confidence to get it. But what I'm seeing more and more is, I've got my career and I've got my family and everything's fine, but I'm not. I am exhausted trying to be everything for everyone, to the point where even though work is finished, it's Friday evening, laptop closed, unable to switch off. So they may have the time to spend painting their daughter's nails, but they're not there.
Yeah, that's hard. That's really hard. Yeah, I actually, I struggle with that myself. I think everybody struggles with work-life balance. But I actually put family priorities into my weekly to-do list. So it sits right there next to work. I think that helps a lot. So when I do a check-in, check-out, which everybody's heard on the show. But during my check-in, I actually say, have I put on the calendar time with my kids? Right? Because that's also a priority. And then my check-in also has, what are you doing for yourself this week? I think that's really important to keep a balance. And without the check-in, and I literally have to check it, go to my calendar, put it on the calendar. And without it, before you know it, work is taken over. Right. And you haven't done the stuff for yourself that you want to do.
So I think increasing, I'm on my own journey, and there were definitely times I would say, I mean, my children are in their late 20s and early 30s now, but when they were like, 20 years ago, I would struggle with that, being able to switch off, feeling like I needed to do everything. I think gradually I'm getting to the place where it's more like an energy flywheel.
Mm,
So it's not about two different sides of the same coin. It is all about me.
mm,
And if I know myself and what energizes myself, and I know which relationships are important to me and how they energize me, and the work that I do energizes me, therefore life is energized, therefore I am energized. And it's this perpetual flywheel. It's just going round and round and round. So instead of seeing self-care as something I have to do and fit in, or date night as something I have to do and fit in, it's an awareness that I need all of those cogs for life to flow.
yeah.
And more increasingly, I'm not 100%, but increasingly I would say for me, life is in flow now.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. I'm still definitely, I have a check mark and I'm putting it on the calendar. Though I appreciate how much it does give me energy for sure. Like I have a priority to put workouts on the calendar and I know those energize me. But they fall off the calendar if I don't check it every week and put it on there. Yeah, interesting. So, I think in the past episode was about uncertainty and how uncertainty really causes stress. And I think our industry is very uncertain. Life in general with climate change and pandemic, whatever, is very uncertain. So how do you approach with your clients managing that constantly changing environment from a stress perspective? Do you have any recommendations for how to manage that?
So I just wanted to end the previous note. I'm fortunate now, well, fortunate, unfortunate. I don't have young children in the house. So you're at a different phase. I think I'm able to be like this now because life at home is a lot calmer, apart from when all the grandkids come around and then it's chaos.
Caregiving makes it very chaotic.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
really hats off to everyone who is doing a good job of working and looking after children, and it's a different ball game. So fully, big respect there. With the uncertainty again, I guess age gives you that perspective that how much of life really is certain and how much of life has stayed constant. And if I'm honest, nothing stays constant. The only, like the cliche, the only thing that stays constant is that it'll always be changing. But it's those grounding questions you ask yourself. Who do I want to be here? What's the worst that can happen? What skills do I already have in my toolbox to be able to deal with that? So habits like pausing. In my course, alongside the course, there's what I call a habit roadmap. And it is filled with things like speaking to yourself nicely, gratitude, learning how to pause. All of that can be pulled out any time to help you. So breathing is, I teach this framework called BRAVE, and it can help with in the moment things, or it can help if you're about to, in a week's time, 2 weeks' time, you've got to stand up on stage and deliver a talk. So the BRAVE stands for breathe, B is the breathe, and using breathing to calm those emotions down. Then the next one is reframe. How can I turn this situation so that I win? In this situation, how can I win? Then the A stands for affirm. Usually when we're in those stressful situations, we're thinking things like, oh no, it's gone wrong again. It always happens to me. Why do things always go wrong? To turning it around saying, no, I'm in control. I may not know the answer, but I know how to find the answer. And speaking to yourself in a way that is going to help you deal with that situation. Because most people, if not all people, will work better. Their brains will work better if they're in a calm state. So by using the breathing and reframing and affirming, you're really helping to lower that anxiety and that emotional level. And then I use visualization a lot. I go for a walk around this lake that's at the back of the house. It's not my lake, I hasten to add. A lot of people, when I talk about it, think, oh, you got a lake in your garden? I said, no, I do not have a lake in my garden. But if I am practicing a talk, I will walk around that lake and I will visualize myself walking on the stage, delivering the message, getting questions from people in the audience, being able to handle those questions, and really enjoying the experience. And then energizing. So supposing you're doing it at that moment, something's gone wrong, and you follow those steps. You've breathed, you've lowered that emotions, you've reframed it, you've spoken to yourself well, you've visualized it going well. Now you energize, you get your energy level in such a way that you can then go and handle that situation.
Yeah, I also think it's easier to manage constant change depending on your workplace too. I think you vibe off of the other energy around you. Not just thinking about my personal experience. So I worked at a nonprofit that helped move volunteers during natural disasters. So hurricane strikes, and we moved volunteers. And obviously, that's a moment of stress, right? We want to make sure we help people quickly. And just the hurricane coming in is stressful. But the way they dealt with it was very calmly. And so the entire organization they just got together to organize things, but it was calm. And converse that with working in a PR firm where no matter what it's like hair on fire, everybody freak out, everybody instantly call, and the energy is like bonkers. So I do think that you can handle your stress, or think about where you would be best to handle your stress, I guess. Some people probably will be fine in the PR firm. I personally was like, this was a bad choice because I'm like the polar opposite of these people. What are you flipping out about? Nobody's dying, because usually it wasn't a natural disaster. So I guess I could hold my calm, but you have to really barricade yourself against everybody else's freak out energy. So anyway, just as a tip, like if you're finding it challenging, perhaps think about the environment you're in and whether it's best for your DNA and your ability to handle that.
Yeah, fully agree. I do not work well with people who are getting completely worked out about a graphic. I mean, for goodness sake.
Yeah, it was not for me. I mean, I was there for 5 years, but still, just long-term, not for me. So I was also kind of wondering about how you help people with potential conflict, because there are some moments in a workplace, obviously, you have conflict with your coworkers or even your boss. And then is there any tips that you help your clients on how to handle that in the workplace?
So we have a whole, 2 modules on communication, listening, and how to have a conversation. Tips like going in and knowing what the result of that conversation is for you to feel that it was a good conversation. And to almost remove any prejudices that you have, go in and have that talk, hear what they are saying, because maybe, just maybe, there is something that you've missed, and really listen to it without that bias that inevitably everyone's going to have some degree of bias. But if you go in angry, then it's not going to go well. So really sit down, reflect, even journal about it. This is what happened. This is what I want to discuss. This is a good outcome for me. And know that if at any point in that talk things are not going okay, it's okay for you to say, thank you for your time. I'm going to go away and process this, and perhaps we could reconvene later. But again, asking yourself, who do I want to be? Do I want to be the person that loses my cool and gets angry? I'm not saying that there is never a space for that. Sometimes it happens. But just go in, again, grace, dignity, and know what you want out of it, and also be prepared to then negotiate. It could be that they also want something from you, and rather than just knee jerking saying, no, I'm not going to do that, ask yourself, actually, is that a fair request? Is that something I want to do? And process it.
I think it's a huge skill to be able to have that language about acknowledging what somebody else has said and then telling them you need time and you're going to take a break and come back, even if it's in a personal environment, even with your kids. So, explain that I've heard you. I constantly, because stress is challenging for my health issues. So with the kids, because they know, but I'll be like, I hear you. But this environment is raising my stress, which is not good for me. So I'm going to go take a break and do some breathing, and I will come back, because I also want them to learn it. Right. So it's important for me to know how to do it and practice it. So that way they can also know how to do it and practice it. But hard. It's not a natural thing to do, I don't think.
I have a funny story, but do you want me to share?
Yeah.
So my husband cycles a lot. His bike the tire was punctured, and we were wheeling it to his sister's house, and because at the time he didn't have any of the kids. And on the way there, he said something quite ordinary, but it triggered me, and I couldn't understand why it triggered me. So I'm now walking down this street with him. He's holding the bicycle, and I'm crying. And I remember saying to him, sobbing, saying, I don't know why I'm upset, but I'll figure it out and I'll get back to you. And he's mortified because suddenly he's got this crying woman walking with him in the middle of the street. So we get to, sisters, she doesn't live very far from us, clean up my face. We go in, have a cup of tea. Everyone's chatting, and I'm thinking, what triggered me? Going back to it, he said this. Oh, actually, you know what? It made me feel this, this, and this. On the way back, I said to him, figured it out now. When you said this is what I thought. And when I thought that, this is how I felt. And he said, no, but I didn't mean that at all. I meant this and this. I thought, oh, okay, that's okay then. So, really owning your emotions. It's your emotion. They didn't make you feel that, you felt. And the more you can get clear on understanding why you're feeling what you're feeling and have the ability to figure it out, even if you don't know in that instant, the more power you will have.
Yeah, that's really strong. Yeah. So let's see, what else have we not chatted about? Let's talk about careers. So how do you counsel your clients to think about their careers, visualize success, setting up a plan to get there, that kind of stuff?
So in our module on vision, I give them different methods to get to that and suggest that, try different ones. Different methods work for different people. So we go through vision boarding, then we go through vision listing. We go through what I call a dreams dump, saying, don't dismiss anything that you've dreamt about, just put it down on a piece of paper. We go through the wheel of life. And we also understand, everything is holistic. So I never just talk to somebody about their career. We always incorporate life in that, because you can't, I'm dealing with a whole person. I'm not just dealing with a manager. I don't do corporate type coaching. It's more life coaching. And when you get to success, what does that look like? The first vision board I created for myself, I put things on there that I thought I should have, and it just didn't work for me. And then the second one, it was, I know I want to write. So I just put a picture of me writing. I didn't know what I was going to write, when I was going to write, how I was going to write, anything. I like public speaking, so there's a picture of me speaking. Again, I didn't know what that looked like, but it was really having clarity on the things I got energy from doing, and working with the rest, just figuring it out. as I went along. But by the time I finished doing that vision board, I created a business card in the middle and it said Tazmin Suleman, coach, writer, speaker. I didn't even know about podcasting then. And everything on that vision board happened very, very quickly. So we go through those exercises. But when I ask about what does success look like, I ask questions like, what do you want to be doing? Where do you want to be working? How much do you want to be earning? How do you want to be feeling? What are you when you're just being? What is your character? And all of that together shapes their goals. So one particular person said, actually, you know what? I thought I wanted this high flying career, but I don't. I'm really happy with where I am. What I want to do is build on my relationship with my family, exercise more, be more creative. And for her, coming from a high flying family, to be able to say that was huge. And she then molded her life in that way. There was another person who was completely burnt out when they started working with me. The job wasn't right for them, but they didn't want to change their career in SEO, but it was a type of organization. So then when we explored what did they look like, she said, I actually would prefer to work in nonprofit with an organization whose values align with mine. And then that's what she went off and did.
Yeah. That's super powerful. It's interesting because my husband was always like, he's a musician. He's always like, I wanted to be a composer or not a composer, a conductor. But then as he dug into it more, it's a lot of travel. It's a lot of performances at night, and it directly conflicts with the fact that he wanted to have a family. Right. So similar, like you think you want to do it, but then you dig into it a little bit more and you're like, that actually doesn't align with my values. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have, so this has been great. I just wanted to see if you had any other wins or resources that you want to share with our audience.
So I can definitely send you some links for resources that people. So there's a video on the Brave technique that we talked about. There's a self-reflection booklet. And for me, self-reflection is the starting point. Get to know yourself first, and then everything else will go from there.
Great. So how can people learn more about you?
There's the website, tazminsuleman.com. And then there's also the podcast website, which is the SEO Mindset podcast. I've forgotten. I will write it down and I'll send you the link. You can put it in the show notes or something.
Sounds good. This has been super helpful. Great tips. I love the conversation. I think this is going to be valuable for all the listeners. Thanks so much for listening. To find out more about the podcast and what we're up to, go to digitalmarketingvictories.com. And if you like what you heard, subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Rate us, comment, and share the podcast, please. I'm always looking for new ideas, topics, and guests. Email us at digitalmarketingvictories@gmail.com or DM us on Twitter at DMVictories. Thanks for listening.